Okay friends, one of the first things we have to do is safely raise and support the truck by the frame so the front wheels are off the ground. After that, let's get under here and remove this plate. Now that we have the front shield off, let's continue by removing the rearward shield as well. Now that we have the shield out of the way, we have a clear view of our differential, and then up along that, you can see where our Pitman arm connects onto the rest of the steering. You're going to see that it has a castle nut on it, and that castle nut, of course, is going to have a locking cotter pin as well. Let's go ahead and get the cotter pin out of there. Now let's continue on to removing that nut. So now we're going to move along to the outside aspect of the driver's side frame. If you were to look along here, you're going to find that there's 3 mounting bolts. We're going to go ahead and remove 2 and leave 1 loose. And leave that one in a little bit. Remove those. Now the next thing we need to do is continue with our hammer and a pickle fork. And we're going to come right in between the Pitman arm and this arm itself. Essentially just separate the 2. Okay, so now that we got that separated, let's go back outside of the frame and just remove that last bolt fully. Now the next thing we're going to do is separate the 2 pieces here. There we are. Now the next thing we need to do is remove this bolt that holds the steering damper shock to the frame itself. Just going to go ahead and hold onto the nut up top. Out of here. Perfect. You might notice to be able to maneuver the box around that you have to get up inside the truck and be able to turn the steering wheel a little bit just so that Pitman arm can get out of the way. All right, now I'm just going to wiggle the box around so I have a nice clear view of the nut right there. And of course we can move the shock out of the way so we can get our socket on there. We're just going to use a 34mm socket. You can slide it right on there, and then of course we'll go ahead and remove that Pitman arm nut. Make sure you grab onto that washer. We're going to be reusing it. Let's continue with our Pitman Arm Puller. Make sure you use a little bit of grease along the driver area here. That's going to be very important. Now I'm just going to slide it up and in there behind the arm itself with these 2 ears, and then I'm going to put this up against the shaft of the actual steering box itself. Just slide it in. We're going to center it as much as possible. We'll snug it up, and then we'll drive off that Pitman arm. Get our tool out of here. I'm going to lift up on this and remove the Pitman arm. There it is, friends. Now we're just going to add a little bit of thread locker to the threaded area of the steering box. Okay friends, now it's time to get our new Pitman arm in there. One thing that I do want to mention is you have to make sure it's facing in the exact direction that the original one was. Let's go ahead and place that up on there, and then of course we'll start our washer and our nut. You're going to notice that this arm is keyed, so there's really only 4 ways that it can go on. Essentially, if you have it facing in the same direction as it was before, you should be doing all right. All right, let's go ahead and put on that washer, and then go ahead and start on the nut. Okay, let's snug this up. Okay, let's go ahead and torque this to 185 foot-pounds. Now the next thing we're going to continue on to do is to lift up our steering box, and then we're going to put our Pitman arm into the steering linkage where it belongs, and then of course we'll line up our bolt holes with the steering box through the frame. All right, there we are, easy peasy. Now let's continue on to putting on this lower nut. Now let's go ahead and snug this up and then torque it to 60 foot-pounds. Now that we have that torque to 60 foot-pounds, the next thing you want to pay attention to is the stud of the Pitman arm where it connects onto this shaft. The stud itself is going to have a small hole, and of course the nut has all these slots. What you want to do is make sure that one of the slots of the nut lines up with the hole on the Pitman arm stud. If it doesn't, continue tightening until the next one does. Once you have that through, go ahead and peen it over so there's no way this nut can come loose. All right, the next thing we need to do is go ahead and clean up the threads on our mounting bolts for the steering box. All right, so now we're gonna go ahead and put in the steering box to the frame bolts. There's gonna be 3 of them. We cleaned up the threads, and of course we used a little bit of red thread locker. Now the next thing I wanna do is line up the box so the bolt can go through the frame holes and into the actual box itself. I got that first bolt started. Let's go ahead and start in the other 2, and then we'll snug them up. With them all started, let's go ahead and snug them up, then we'll torque them to 56 foot-pounds. All right, let's go ahead and line up that steering stabilizer shock. We'll put the bolt through, start the nut, snug it up. Now we'll just go ahead and torque this to 40 foot-pounds. Now let's go ahead and start putting these shields back up. All right, so let's go ahead and get this shield on here. Start all of your bolts, and then we'll snug them up. Okay, friends, now that we got it back on the ground, the next thing you want to do is get yourself safely down to get a 4-wheel alignment.